Hello and welcome to Conversations with Ex-Catholics. I am very excited to have John Luke on the show today to tell his story. But before I bring John Luke onto the screen, I would just like to offer a few quick trigger warnings. We will be discussing heavy topics today, topics that include mental health issues. We may discuss suicide today. Also, we may use anti-gay slurs in this episode in a clinical context in which we're just telling a story. But I do think it's worth mentioning that derogatory language may be part of today's episode, so please just be aware of that. But with the fun part out of the way, I would like to welcome John Luke. John Luke, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to have you here. I think that your story, John Luke, is going to be very, very important for Catholics and ex-Catholics to hear. And I guess, if you don't mind, would you start kind of at the beginning? So over email, you described yourself to me as a lukewarm Catholic growing up with a reversion experience later on in life when you were like more like an adult. Can you tell me a little bit about how you grew up and that reversion experience?
I grew up in kind of like a Rust Belt town that was very culturally Catholic. I'm sure you're familiar with the vibe and the environment. My family wasn't super religious. My mom was pretty liberal, a staunch Democrat, which doesn't fly very well in the conservative Catholic Church. But they did like send me and my sister to CCD, even though we were public school kids. We really only went to mass during the school year when we had to for CCD, stuff like that. Definitely not like a very strongly practicing Catholic, kind of, in and out, kind of going through the motions through most of my childhood. Um, that being said, it wasn't like the traditionalist like fever dream where it's all like dancing and clowns and like celebrating gay marriages. Like it was still the Catholic Church in the early 2000s. It was still pretty, maybe not aggressively and violently, but very anti-gay. Like I remember very clearly the priest at my parish growing up, Sacred Heart, talking about how awful it was that Massachusetts legalized gay marriage and how it was going to destroy the country. It definitely was not an accepting environment for that. Like there was kind of the bland toleration, but it was always like super clear, like that this is not a good thing. And I'm gay, and I've known that since fourth grade. Like it's been pretty obvious and not really a question for me. So I did grow up like living in that world, and like even though my parents didn't believe that kind of stuff and like wouldn't say that at home, I was still going to a place with authority figures who were saying stuff like this. Um, so that was like through high school. I got confirmed, and kind of was fell away. I described myself as an atheist when I went away to college. I was pretty open and out, which was very good. Um, and then things started to change. I transferred back to my hometown halfway through college, which was a much more conservative, like small town environment. So I think there was some loneliness and like being in a less, accepting and healthy environment. And that kind of got me questioning. I knew just a lot more religious people than I did when, I went away to the big city to go to school. And then, yeah, it got a little bit worse where after graduation, I started a job, an even smaller, more rural area. And I think that was very, very bad for me personally. The environment was much more overtly homophobic, in kind of like a cruel way, not just like the bland like philosophical opposition. Like I remember, people at work like calling the one out person a dyke, and it was pretty gross. Um, and yeah, that that in and of itself like didn't make me like agree with them, but I kind of went back into the closet, which was not a pleasant experience and was pretty lonely in that, and just everyone around me was much more conservative. And then spending a lot of time online. I started watching a lot of Bishop Barron videos, and that kind of presented a version of religion that I thought I could get behind on or get behind. um, it's presented in this very like neat package. It sounds like important and dramatic, and that brought me back in 2016 or so. Um, and then yeah, I was kind of practicing um, more more devoutly, I guess, in a conservative parish, somewhat charismatic, but with like a lot of trad influences. Weekly confession. I was a daily mass goer. I had a weekly holy hour at 4 a.m. on Sundays. At the Perpetual Adoration Chapel, which I actually liked a lot because it just like forced me to like do something meditative and like not not like technology based for an hour every day. But yeah, I was pretty committed to it. I was definitely doing everything right, and I can say I like earnestly believed that it was true and I was doing the right thing. And then yeah, as time went on, like I grew or I found more and more like trad content. It's actually very easy to get to and see if you're just casually consuming any kind of like Catholic content. Like the EWTN radio station in my hometown, like would play like sermons from Father Ripperger and Father Wolf and all the FSSP stuff, and like you hear that, and honestly, like I think they're kind of right in that they're a more accurate representation of what the Catholic Church teaches, but it's also some really messed up stuff and pretty harmful and dangerous. Um, so yeah, that was my childhood and the reversion stuff, and then I finally left after COVID. That really helped me kind of get away from it all, and some of the responses, particularly to the vaccines, really kind of broke the spell. To quote Daniel Dennett, like it really helped me to really like seriously question, and I think a very healthy way, because it gave me just like enough courage to like ignore the inherent threat of like hell and like all that stuff that I think um, really makes it hard to question and like think critically when you're like actively practicing, and if you accept that as a realistic possibility, like it's not worth taking the risk.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about the pipeline, I guess, from Bishop Barron to Father Ripperger and stuff like that. It's my experience. I know I use the term pipeline like almost sarcastically, but not sarcastically. Um,
No, I think you're dead on. Like that's how it works.
yeah, and Bishop Barron is mostly benign, I'll say.
Yeah,
Um, he's funny because he's more trad than like the trads think that he's super liberal. The liberals think that he's super trad. In reality, he's somewhere in the middle.
yeah,
He's fairly
yeah,
orthodox, but he's kind. So I don't know where that puts him, but there is this pipeline where it starts off with Bishop Barron, but then somehow you're at Taylor Marshall, and Father Wolf and
yeah,
stuff like that. I
yeah. Yeah, because I think it's really simple in that, like, if you take what the Catholic Church teaches seriously, like, you end up at their position pretty easily. Like, I don't know, it felt like there was a lot less mental gymnastics you had to make to be like an FSP style traditionalist than like a modern conservative, even like you you could kind of, it was easier to like hand wave like a lot of the like Second Vatican Council stuff as like not being, you know, infallible. And like if you look historically, like the Catholic Church and what it taught looked much, much more like what the traditionalists say it is than Bishop Barron or even John Paul II or anything like that. But also like even the conservatives, like yeah, Bishop Barron is benign compared to Taylor Marshall. And he seems like a nice guy. Like I would love to have a beer with him and just chat. Like he seems like an
Me
interesting guy
too.
to talk to. But also like the belief system that he promotes like is can be pretty harmful. Um, and that's not to like judge him as being like an evil or a bad person, but because I think he's honest and earnest and is trying to do the right thing, and I have a lot of sympathy for that. But I also think it's important to recognize that like um, these aren't benign ideas. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. Is that any spokesperson for the Catholic Church can be as kind as as kind can be, but if
mm-hmm.
the ideas behind the kindness are harmful, then what good is the kindness? So I guess
Yeah,
um, with with that in mind, I guess I have another question for you. So, um, you had this life where you grew up Catholic, but maybe not super Catholic, but you became super Catholic, like kind of like in college, after college, and stuff. Um, in emails to each other back and forth, you described your reversion as happening officially in like 2016 ish, but you called yourself, I think the term was like Catholic curious as early as like
yeah,
2014. So I guess um, what um, what did that look like for you? I guess so. I went from hardcore trad to nothing at all in the span of like, I mean, kind of like a day in some sense. Um, but so I struggled to put myself in your shoes, I guess. So um, I guess I want to ask you more about the transition, I guess, you know, as you got traddier and traddier. Um, but before I ask you that, I do just want to pull up a couple comments. So first, Colin says, yes, so true. And Colin, I don't even know what you're referring to, but you're right. It is so true. Um, Daniel brings up a good point. He says that the pipeline might be more the algorithm's fault than Bishop Barron's fault. That might be true for YouTube
yeah. I
anyway.
Yeah, I think that plays a role. Like the algorithm will make everything worse no matter what. But and yeah, I didn't want to like I don't really like hold anything against Bishop Aaron. Like I think he's a reasonable person. Like I don't dislike him. I don't think he's like particularly dangerous. But I did want to like acknowledge that you can still be a good person and like believe some bad stuff. Like I think I fell into that category and probably still do in certain ways. Like people aren't infallible. We're social creatures. Like we also don't like learning we're wrong. Um, but that doesn't mean we're not. And it's important to recognize the both that you don't have to punish someone for having a wrong idea while acknowledging that it's not a good idea and can be harmful.
Yeah, that's a very very good point. Along that same kind of line, so are pipelines a pipeline to deeper knowledge or practice in a certain area, or just naturally occurring phenomenon, or engineered? I'll give you my thoughts, and then John Luke, I guess I'm interested to get yours. I think that the pipelines that we were talking about specifically here are absolutely engineered, and they're not engineered towards deeper knowledge or practice. I think that they're only engineered to whatever's going to grab your attention. Um,
Yeah,
so YouTube knows that they can steal more of your time and attention, and then therefore get more advertising dollars by radicalizing you, because more radicalized people are going to watch more content than less radicalized people. And so I think it's engineered to happen. Now, I don't think YouTube actually sets out with the goal of like we want to radicalize people, but I think that
yeah,
YouTube does have the goal of we want to show people the content that's going to make them stay on our platform longer.
yeah. I think like you need both. Um, I think you could still have the radical pipeline. Maybe it's just less efficient. if YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff didn't exist. Because I do think part of it is natural that, like, if you're devoted to something like I was, you want to know more about it. And so you want to know, particularly Catholicism, which makes some very like dramatic historical claims and builds a lot of its credibility on being a 2,000-year-old historical institution. Um, so you will like run into that stuff. Like if you like even just like do like standard practices like reading about the saints, like you'll get to Thomas More, who was all for burning heretics. And I don't think you can try to rationalize that as like a person of his times, but like we canonized him, we said he's in heaven, and that he's someone to look up to, and he was totally cool with torturing people who did not agree with the Catholic Church. Um, and if you believe it, like if you believe that he is like that the church is infallible and it makes those like kind of judgments, right? And like that was the basic way the Catholic Church and Christendom worked for over 1,000 years. Um, it's really hard to like just rationalize it as well. They were just a brutaler time when it's an organization claiming to be infallible, or at least like you can be really confident in their judgment on morality. So you're left with like a pretty awful situation where if you think like hell is real, it's like, well, I guess this must be like okay in some way I don't understand, because like you're you want to like follow the rules and believe, if you like take the basic premises as true, which I don't think are like it's easy to fall for them, right? Like they can be compelling. um like I don't think like I wouldn't have like converted if there wasn't like any like kind of argument for it. If it was just like, well, this is true, the apologists are pretty good at you know doing what they do and selling.
Yeah.
um
I've got two quick thoughts there. So I guess first, just with regard to the whole like canonization thing. So I have this kind of, and I don't think I've like done this soapbox on YouTube, but I have to imagine that there's a decent number of Catholic saints who, let's just pretend that they weren't canonized, and then we found out all this information about them today. Would we canonize them today? I don't think that we would
no,
for a lot
no,
of them.
absolutely not.
And I think that even though we would know that, like, they are products of their time, we still wouldn't excuse, writing about how good it is to burn heretics at the stake. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And there was a lot of anti-Semitism in a lot of the, like, kind of pre 1700s, like, saints and stuff like that. Um, and like we have this like pretty terrible writing, and we canonized them anyway. And I don't think that
yeah,
we would canonize them today if they weren't already canonized.
yeah, because we canonized them at a time where that was like socially
Exactly.
acceptable. Like, and like I went on my like nerd journey on this, where trying to figure out if canonizations were infallible. And that's a rabbit hole we don't need to get into, but I concluded that yeah, this seems like they are. Which both like helped me from like some of my like scruples, because I'm like I can point to like John Paul II, who at least wasn't as bad as like Ripperger, but definitely problematic at least. But like it's like, well, he went to heaven, so it must be okay. Like you
Yeah.
kind of go in these like circles to like try and justify all this stuff and figure out what to do, which I find kind of funny. That like I spent a ton of time like researching like all these questions and like all these like disputed and controversial topics. And it was like so hard to get a clear answer on anything
I
from an
know.
organization that claims to be able to speak infallibly. Like you can't even get a clear answer on how many things are actually infallible.
I know. The canonization question itself is such a good example of this because so the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, recently rebranded as like the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, um, has said that canonization is infallible. They said so in the mid 20th century, I think,
Hmm.
maybe towards the end of the 20th century. But you still have people who say that, like, well, the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith isn't infallible. So who
Yeah,
cares if they say that it's infallible? Like, if a fallible source says that something is infallible, then it's still fallible.
but yeah,
And you're
which that makes sense.
like,
But
what?
also, like, if you got this power, guys, like, just use it. Like, save us all a bunch of time. Like,
Right, right. But they
you
don't
know,
use it
like,
except for like there are some people who hold that there are only like 7 different things that have ever been declared infallibly or something, right?
yeah,
And it's things like the Assumption, and it's things like it's like the Marian dogmas are like considered to
yeah.
be infallible, and like that's it,
It's
just the
conveniently
Marian
stuff that you
dogmas,
can't prove one way or the other. Like,
right?
it's, like, no, yeah. I, that, like, in hindsight, like, seems like an obvious, like, conclusion, like a definite baloney signal, but it, like, now, like, I laugh at it, like, this this really doesn't make sense.
Right, but what you were saying earlier about how it kind of all does make sense. First of all, I guess when you're in that mindset, but then also,
Yeah,
also, um, I really feel like there's only a few like um, assumptions that you need to grant to the Catholic apologist, and then they'll take it from there, and then everything kind of makes sense after that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like it's
absolutely.
yeah, it's like this baseline, and if you grant them the baseline, then everything that they say follows from it. Um, but I don't grant the baseline, and so that's why we
Yeah,
disagree.
that's where the that's where that that's where the hard stuff is. And then, like, once you're in, like, once you accept those, um, like, you get this giant gun to your head, right? Of going to hell for eternity, or like people you love going to hell for eternity, and what that was really, to recognize that was really helpful to help me start deconstructing, in that I realized that this was the thought that I had. I'm like, if I wanted to construct an organization or belief system that would keep people doing stuff that were wrong and not look overtly tyrannical, like, not like the Nazis or like Soviet Russia, where they were like shutting people down, like the threat of hell, reading or seeing like non or anti Catholic things being a near occasion of mortal sin, like all this stuff, like it really, like, subtly discourages like actually questioning. Like, you can question, you can doubt, but you just got to ask the right people and they're going to give you the answer. And then you really can't, you can like doubt them, but like you really can't. Like, you can like have like a, yeah, I don't really get that, but you're kind of like forced to say, well, there must be something I'm missing, and like it's the inexplicable, like God's so much greater than us. Like, how can we judge him? And like that really helped me, like that thought, like that if I were to design this from scratch to keep me to believing in something that was false, this is how I would design it, and like make it look like I'm not, some evil totalitarian thug. And that, I think, that's really important for people to realize. It was at least very helpful for me, to see that. But yeah, once you grant their like basic premises, like you're kind of stuck unless you can get out of those.
Yeah, um, and I recall being told it's okay to ask questions, and then you'd ask a question, and sometimes they'd give you an answer, and you'd ask another question, and like the person that you're asking, generally a priest, would kind of get like frustrated and be like,
Hmm.
"Stop asking all these questions."
Yeah,
And it's like, wait a minute, I thought that we had like the capital T truth, like,
yeah,
um. So I didn't go to the so. I went to an FSSP affiliated school for first through eighth grade, but they had a high school attached. I didn't go because my dad is an engineer and he wanted me
yeah,
to be able to take maths and sciences and stuff. Um, but the people who did go to that high school, I would hear stories from them about how like they would ask tons and tons and tons of questions of their like whoever was teaching a religion that year, typically a priest or a seminarian,
Yeah.
and apparently they would get in trouble for asking questions, and they would
Yeah.
be told like stop asking so many questions, and also like when we give you the answer you just need to accept that that is the answer and stuff like that, and like whoa, like that's,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And like that's obviously an extreme example. I definitely think there's Catholics that like will tolerate like repeated questions, like maybe get annoyed in like just a normal like I don't want to deal with this kind of way. I think those people are probably more common, but I think the thing that's scary or like that needs to be known more frequently is like that kind of attitude. It's so easy to get there if you accept like the basic premises of the Catholic Church.
Yes. Um, and to that point, Colin left a comment that I really like. I'm absolutely going to steal this. I used to describe the feeling that Catholicism was like logical claustrophobia because of how internally consistent they make things. I really like that logical claustrophobia. It's like once you kind
Yeah,
of step into their box, it all kind of fits.
yeah. If you're in the box, like it A follows from B. Like it's very strictly logical if you start from the premises, but the premises are where it falls apart. But it's really hard to get to those, and it's also like attractive. Like the like consistency makes it seem like they got their act together. They know what they're talking about. Like they can boom the easy answers, um, but like those easy answers don't describe the real world in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this is something that I just want to kind of highlight. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of looking at the sidebar, and Daniel is saying some cool stuff. So just to let you know who Daniel is Catholic,
Okay.
but I think that if everybody was Daniel, the world would be like a fantastic place.
Yeah.
He says I think infallibility is on its way out. I kind of agree. There was an interesting comment. So Daniel, if you remember the comment, I would love for you to post it. But then, good point. On the way out might be like hundreds of years. That is
Yeah.
absolutely true. The
It
church
is
does
the
nothing
Catholic
quick.
Church. Like
Yeah,
yeah, it's gonna take a while.
yeah. Nothing
Yeah.
happens quickly.
That would I think that would be healthy.
I think so too. I think so too. And he adds, in the modern church, I think infallibility is already put behind us. I mean, that's kind of
I,
true, right? Because the last infallible statement was in like infallible was the 1950s, right?
Possibly. I don't know. It was one of the Marian dogmas.
I think.
I don't remember exactly. Um, I do want to push back on that a little bit
Okay.
in that, yeah, like the the vast majority of Catholics, like it's definitely on its way out. Like a lot of people don't buy it who are in the pews and donating money, but the institutions and the types of people who are going to be the next leaders in the Catholic Church in like 10, 20 years are going to Franciscan and Christendom, right? And they're totally bought into this, because in some ways, like we already described, like if you take the basic premises as true, like infallibility like follows pretty neatly. Like and it's just when like for me, like seeing it like as like a practical thing is where it really broke down. So I think we're going to have a situation where you know it's going to be like what Benedict wanted, a smaller, more devout church, but they're going to be like totally bought in on these because they're going to be the ones who are left, and that's the pipeline right now for leadership right now. Like that's it's people who went there that are like producing like the YouTube videos, the the gateway drug, if you will. Like it's like the most like eye-catching content is not from like your liberal Catholic, cafeteria Catholic. It's the Pints with Aquinas guy, Matt Trad. It's Bishop Barron, who compared to some of the rad trads are, much better. But they're sold, like they're sold, and I was sold too. So I'm really trying to avoid like judging them too harshly. Like it's like I said, it's a system that's really designed to help smart people like believe wrong things. Like I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm a rocket scientist, and I fell for it.
Yeah. Um, and my friend CJ Rice kind of has been saying a couple of things in the chat. I might not be able to pull up the right one right now, um, but uh, yeah, like if you submit your mind to the box, it all does make sense. But he and CJ too is a non-Catholic Christian, so
Mm-hmm.
uh, but and he brings up the point like it's not just that you are submitting yourself to the current box; it's also all future forms of the
Future
box.
forms of yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good point.
yeah. And then like when it does change because of that, like chaos ensues, and it becomes pretty miserable for the people on the ground who are like, I just want to do the right thing, man. Like just tell me.
Yeah, and
And then
what's funny too
go
is that
ahead.
like among some Catholics, there's this like they'll often quote I forget like who said it, but there's a sentiment that's something like the secret to being holy is like fostering a pious ignorance about what goes on in the Vatican, and like that's kind of hilarious to me
Yeah,
because even if it's true, it's probably better for your mental health and stuff. The Vatican is supposed to be the infallible like word of the
yeah,
Vicar of Christ. Like, whoa.
yeah. You know, if they got this tool, like, man, that could solve a lot of problems. Like, let's just pull it out. Like, and maybe like I had a priest described as like if a pope like tried to declare something unfallible as or infallible as or fallible as infallible, like he'd be struck down before he can utter the words. And like, like just risk it, man. Like, just try your best. Like, come on, like, get us out, throw us a bone.
Hey, yeah, I mean that's a really good point. That's like an empirical claim that we could actually test. Like if a pope wanted to be like, I just want to make sure that like this is all real, he
Yeah,
could just say something.
he could. But the thing is, like, nothing is declared infallible unless it's like something that's not provable.
Right.
So like it's also like perfect in that way that like you can't dispute it, but it like you have this like hold over you. And like it was also like super clear if you read like what Benedict taught and like stuff like that, like even the infallible stuff, like you're supposed to believe it. You're supposed to follow it. Like even if it's not infallible, like you can question it, but like you should at least like not make a stink about it, like and like go public about it. Like you can ask and like, yeah, I don't know, and like maybe propose alternatives, but like you were supposed I forget what the exact phrasing was. It was some the Catholic bullshit phrasing, like obedience of something.
Yeah. And Daniel just said, Pope Francis, hold my beer. Pope
Yeah,
Francis would absolutely be my number one pope of all time if he did that. He
yeah, I
still
would
might
love
be,
it.
but
Like, please, let's give it a try. Like, do it, and let's see. Let's know for sure. We can, and then if it works and he says it, like, hey, go on retirement, man. Like, start selling everything off. Like, and yeah, we can just move on with our lives. But
yep.
instead, we, and then like you'll get the argument is like, oh, that's like blasphemy because you're tempting God and stuff like that. And it's just one of those like mechanisms that like you can get out of like the obvious ways where like the thing doesn't work in the real world. Like it may follow from your logical points, but that doesn't really matter if like this just doesn't work in the real world we live in. Like there's obviously something missing.
Yep. Yep. Um and my friend CJ Rice says answers to dubia aren't infallible. No, they're not. Um
It's only infallible if the Pope says it's infallible.
yeah.
Like has to explicitly like say it. Like there's no formula, but it's like, yeah, dude, this is infallible. Like you need something like that.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that they always say is that it has to be ex cathedra, right? Like that's the
Yeah,
one thing. And then it has to be about matters of faith or morals, right? If it's not about faith or morals, like even if the Pope says this is infallible, but then it's about climate change, it's not actually infallible
Yeah.
because it has nothing to do with faith and morals. And then also,
Well, well, so what's the dividing line between that? Like, if you say climate change is like burning fossil fuels is a sin because it does X, Y, and Z, like, well, obviously, like the sin relies on it causing climate change, but that's a moral question.
yeah, I have a very strong feeling though that if the Pope was like, "Hey guys, this is infallible. Fossil fuels are a sin," I have a very strong feeling that all trad adjacent Catholics would be like, "No, that has nothing to do with faith or morals. So even though the Pope said it's infallible, it's not." And there would be
Yeah,
debate about it for the rest of history too, which is why
yeah,
like papal infallibility is the biggest like nothing burger. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's so funny that it's like a selling point of Catholicism, and then you actually get into it, and you're like, well, actually, we can't actually
There's
go
just
there.
these, there's like these three like Marian dogmas that like only like theologians like really get upset about or like passionate about. It's like, oh yeah, that, like you the assumptions, like yeah, that's cool. But if you like if you were a devout Catholic, you're like, yeah, we found Mary's grave, like there was bones, like nobody like would lose their faith over it. It's like, oh yeah, she was human, it makes sense. Like I don't know. It's just like it seems like the whole 1800s were spent on this issue as like this big controversy and so much energy was spent on it. And then like we gave the Pope this tool and just no use for it. And it just like petered out as like a nothing burger.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this was all a big tangent, and it was awesome. But I actually wouldn't mind asking you another question, if that's all right.
Okay.
Um, so we were talking earlier about your kind of move from, nominally Catholic to eventually like fairly trad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember over email you telling me that there was like a time where you were both like attending Bible studies, but then also attending like the LGBT club at school. Um,
Yeah, that was before my like official reversion,
okay.
like which I date pretty specifically to the Sunday after Easter in 2016 because that's when
Huh.
I went to confession, which I thought was like at the time because it seemed like providential because that's Divine Mercy Sunday. Though I don't know if the trads believe in that, but I was in a charismatic passion, so we were all for that. So that like felt like really like important and meaningful. But like during that exploring phase, like I was a bunch of Protestants, like stuff like that. So like I would go hang out with them, and there was usually like Bible study stuff. And then I was like still going to the LGBT club, and I told myself at the time, it's like, yeah, I'm just they're nice people. I'm exploring. I'm trying to open my mind, stuff like that. And I think I did like notice that, and I think part of this was a bit of a show in hindsight. That the like religious people did seem happier and a little bit more content, and I was not super content or happy. So that was like attractive, and they were all like nice people. Like I enjoyed like hanging out with them, and honestly better than like the workplace situation I described, where yeah, it wasn't supportive of uh, LGBT rights, but they weren't using slurs. Like they weren't like even like some of the like stuff you hear in the pulpit and trans circles about gay marriage destroying the country. Like there's none of that stuff. Like they would like answer like, yeah, it's marriages between a man and a woman, stuff like that. But otherwise, like they were pretty nice and kind of cool to hang out with. And there was like a mix of like Catholics and Protestants, like of all varieties. Um, and then yeah, I kind of had a similar like trajectory back to the Catholic Church and did become like a Protestant, both like an evangelical conservative Protestant or like a liberal Protestant. It was similar to John Henry Newman, who I read a lot of at the time, and I kind of agree with his conclusion that if there is a true church. It's number one, probably most likely the Catholic Church. Number two, the Orthodox. But at least in my opinion, historically, with the information available, probably not. You know, most of the Protestant denominations. Um, and I'm a big history buff, so that was like a compelling argument that like I felt like I had some skills to like parse. Um, and like I was when I was Catholic, I was so I feel like this is such a weird thing to say. I was very devoted to John Henry Newman. Like I kind of considered him my patron. So I was like super pumped. I was still a practicing Catholic when he got canonized, and I was super excited for that. And even to this day, like I put him in the like Bishop Barron category. Like he's the kind of guy I would love to have a beer with. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the trajectory of like how I like was doing both. I was really in a like exploring and questioning and like trying different things and like trying to get a new perspective, which I think is like a good instinct, and I'm glad I did that. Um, but I know now more and have had some time to reflect on that, and there's some warning signs from that like yeah you should go do that probably. But I think part of the reason why I wanted to do this is help inoculate that like this is not the a perfect happy life. There's issues with this, and you're going to get a very nicely neatly packaged proposition. And it could end badly for you. Like I think it ended badly for me. Like I lost some good years of my life where I wasn't living, openly as who I really am. Like permanently like swearing off like a relationship. Um, and there's consequences to, that those decisions. Um, but also like I don't want to like do the like Catholic or the Christian thing, which is to like box it off like they're dangerous. You can't talk to them. You can't go to their Bible study, um, because you do like you need to like you know make your own decisions. But also like people who have lived through it, like me and you and a lot of other people who are watching this, like also need to be vocal about like, hey, like this is the consequences of what you're doing, and like maybe and this is why we left, and here's the reasons. So at least like hopefully people are making an informed decision, um, and not just getting the like the shiny brochure.
Yeah. I've got two questions for you. So, and I'll ask them both at the same time so that I don't forget them. But the first one is, did you and answer the second one first, I guess. So the question I want you to answer second is about the perceived happiness of religious people and how that was kind of like attractive. That might have made you want to be Catholic. But the first thing that I want to ask you is probably a little bit quicker to answer. Did at any point in your like reversion experience, did you ever like stop referring to yourself as gay? Did you ever try to think to yourself like, no, I could be straight? That seems to be a
Uh,
common thing for people I talk to, but
yes. Thankfully, no. Um, I like maybe for like a month, I'm like, maybe I could make a girlfriend work. And like, no, that would be cruel. Like the to my partner, like because it would be a lie. Like it wouldn't work. It would just be like trying to make myself feel better. Um, I never like felt like I had priests tell me like, oh, you should never refer to yourself as gay. You should never like because I didn't like hide it in confession. Like I was pretty clear. Like because I thought I kind of took the more modern Catholic line. It was like, yeah, I'm trying to do the right thing. I like guys. Like then I just got to deal with that. And they're like, you shouldn't call yourself gay. You shouldn't identify as that. You shouldn't hang out with gay people. I took the second one seriously because they told me it was a near occasion of sin, and I would probably go to hell if I did that, which was um, convincing.
Yeah.
Um, but like I never like bought into the like I don't refer to myself as gay. I never thought I could like change. Like I definitely like read like what's the guy's name? Something Nicole. Yeah, he's like big and he's a Catholic therapist who is like super popular in conversion therapy circles. I can't remember his name right now. I like read some like not like a book but like blog posts and I'm like, yeah, I don't think you can turn me straight. Maybe I thought myself maybe I'm just that gay. Like it's not gonna work on me. Maybe for other people. And I never like bought into the psychological reasons why people are gay, like abuse and not having good relationships with your father and all that stuff. Like I always thought it was like a little implausible. So I say this tongue in cheek, but for the grace of God go I. Like I avoided that, and that kind of thinking really destroys people. So I am very like glad that like my skeptical skills were enough to keep me out of that.
Does that look right? I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think that's right.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's right. It sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar just because that's not something that I had to go through myself. But I believe that I was watching. I don't remember the guest. It might not even have been a recent episode, but it was an episode of Pints with Aquinas, and they were talking about gay conversion therapy, and they were like, well, we need to separate, the antiquated concept of gay conversion therapy, which is bad. We all agree it's bad, right? Like, don't shock people into not being gay.
Yeah,
But there is a good, like, modern gay conversion therapy
yeah,
where we're just helping people think through why they might be attracted to the gender they're attracted to and seeing if we can't help them stop it. And it's like, oh
yeah.
my god, like you
Yeah, you
guys.
can't. You can't. No, a really for everybody watching, there's a really good documentary on Netflix called I think it's Pray Away, and it's all with people who ran Exodus International. They were all considered themselves ex-gays, and like were big in that movement who just abandoned it. Or like, no, we were wrong, and we really hurt people. And I encourage like anybody who thinks there might be something there to like really watch that and like understand that like people have tried very hard to do this and there's just no evidence of it working. Maybe like a few people, but they also people could be lying. Like it's such an easy lie to make.
If I haven't seen that documentary, then I've seen another one that was like similar. Um, but I've definitely seen some kind of documentary about like people who said that they were ex-gay. Um, and yeah, it's shocking the numbers of them who are ex-gay for a couple years and then they're like, I was never ex-gay.
Yeah,
And I
because
mean, really,
you're
it's
not.
not shocking, but yeah, I mean, it would be shocking if you actually bought that conversion therapy actually worked when it
Yeah,
definitely doesn't. Um,
it's so clear that it does. But like I feel like Christianity and Catholicism is so invested in homosexuality being unnatural that like there's always going to be this quest to like try and find a cure. Like if you classify it as like a mental illness, then you're going to try and find the cure for the illness. So I think sadly like we're going to go through that cycle over and over again because um, if particularly with Catholicism, like if you accept like gay relationships and homosexual behavior as legitimate, like the sexual morality kind of falls apart quickly. So like there's a lot of incentive to like keep up that edifice to like find reasons for homosexuality being like a clinical disease to explain it.
for
And a lot of
sure.
people are going to suffer because of that. Like it, it's pretty obvious that like doing, actual conversion therapy where you try to change your orientation is essentially torture and really really damages people, and I think we should not have toleration for that.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of harming people, um, so Daniel brings up that at the synod on synodality, I guess somebody shared the story of a young lady who committed suicide after going to conversion therapy, and Colin, it says it's probably Alana. There's a podcast that I'm in the middle of. Alana is, I think, in the name of the podcast. Colin, if you remember the name and you want to put it in the chat, I'll bring it up. But it's a really good podcast about a devout young Catholic girl who grew up gay and Catholic, and wound up committing suicide after conversion therapy. And this was like recently too. Like this was,
Yeah,
I think that she died like 5 years ago or something like that. So this is not like a story from the '90s or something where the culture was, you know, different than it was today. Like, you know, it's still similar, but different. You know, 30 years makes a
yeah,
difference. This was like 5 years ago. Um,
yeah. No, it's still definitely a thing. It may be more underground now because it is not as accepted and oftentimes illegal, particularly for minors. But like this is still a thing, and I think it's gonna like keep going because I think the the belief structure really incentivizes that kind of thinking, and sadly and truly tragically, like people will die because of this, certain people will be very very severely hurt, and I am lucky with the road that I was heading down that I avoided that because that wasn't me, but it could have been.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, and Colin adds, I think reparative therapy, I assume that's what they're calling conversion therapy in order to kind of fly under the radar. Um, and,
Yeah,
and Colin also recommends prayers for Bobby. Um, I haven't seen
I
it,
have not seen
but
that.
um, now it's on my list.
Yeah,
Um, the other question I had for you though was that we mentioned, um, hey, these religious people look like they're leading fulfilled and happy lives. I might not be feeling so fulfilled and happy right now, so maybe that is a reason for me to convert. Um, I'm interested in kind of getting your thoughts about like that whole thing, and then also, you know, now having been through it, do you suspect that all the people who look really happy are really happy?
not all of them. Like I obviously can't read people's minds. There probably are people that are very very happy with it. Um, I think probably like the father Rippigers of the world are pretty happy with it because they get a pretty nice life with it. You
Yeah.
know, not getting questioned on it. But I do think like a lot of it, and I've heard this from a lot of other people, is like there's like, and I saw this with just like the culture at the parish I attended. It's like you're you were always told like there was a phrase that was thrown around that like joy is the banner on the castle that shows the king is in residence or something like that. I forget the exact, like very poetic, which sounds really nice. And there's just like such a like you know to like show that it's almost like the like Protestant work ethic thing to like show that you're righteous. Like you gotta like be all happy and
Yes.
joyful, and you also like because like your the like of your soul is dependent on like helping other people go to heaven. So like you don't want to be all sad and miserable so that people won't buy it. Like it's almost like a multi-level marketing scheme.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I asked that because I suspected that your answer was going to be similar to mine. Absolutely. There are like super well adjusted, happy, normal people in
Yeah,
every religious circle. Like, absolutely. 100%. However, my experience in traditionalism was that people tried extra hard to be extra happy externally, partially in competition with each other. Like there was definitely like a let's see which family can be the happiest with the most kids. Because like, oh, that's
Yeah.
impossible. No, it's not. Look at me and my happy family. We have 12
Yeah.
kids and we're amazing. But then also to convince the outside world that like, hey, look, this is the life for you. Um,
Well, real quickly, the parents may be super happy, but that's because the oldest kids are doing a lot of the
mm,
parenting for them.
yeah, I've I've heard from people who said like, hey, yeah, so like, I was the oldest. I'm a girl, and I had 10 younger siblings, so it was all thrown on me. Like my parents raised
Yeah,
me, and I raised the rest.
and I saw this because I like obviously hung out with people who are from large families, and you'll get a lot of like, that was really rewarding, and like, but I doubt it. Like being a mom at 15 sounds miserable.
Yeah, and I'm sure that some people loved it. I'm sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
some.
No, there's all kinds of different people in the
Right.
world. Like I'm sure some people are very, very happy in it, but I also think this maybe like more pronounced in like the like semi like charismatic world that I was in. So like for context, like we were an hour and a half away from Steubenville, so a lot of the like Franciscans like
Okay.
charismatic culture really influenced
Mm,
where I was living. I went to Steubenville a few different times to some of the big conferences they have, and there's like a lot more emphasis on like these like emotional like states in that like kind of odd branch of Catholicism
mm-hmm.
that probably made it maybe a little bit more common in the world I was in than like an FSP parish.
Yeah, we were a fairly stoic group. Like at
Yeah,
least my FSSP chapel was fairly stoic. Um, in fact, like we looked down on our Novus Ordo cousins for like expressing too much emotion and stuff like that,
yeah,
which is kind of silly because then especially when you compare like your normal Novus Ordo doesn't express much emotion at all if you compare them to the
no,
charismatic Catholics, but
no, not at all.
I remember we actually had one charismatic family in our town, and I remember my parents having to explain to me like they are Catholic, and I was like, "What?" They're like, "Technically, they are Catholic," and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yes." Like it did not make any sense to me because of how I grew up. That like somebody so
Yeah,
emotional could be so like could be very Catholic.
yeah,
Oh.
and they are very, very Catholic. I think there's like a common like misconception that they're like more liberal because it's so influenced by American style Protestantism, but in many ways like they have the same you know same thought patterns as traditionalism. They can be more Catholic than the Pope too.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely,
like
absolutely. CJ Rice says that there's lots of fake happiness in the church and on Instagram, and then he added
yeah,
glad trad. And this, I'll admit that this wasn't really something like I haven't been a practicing Catholic in over 5 years now. It's been just over 5 years, but the 5 years is long enough where I feel like it has changed, and now there are like Catholic social media influencers where it's like the I know about the phenomenon of the trad wife phenomenon. Like there are
yeah,
like trad wife influencers and stuff, and I that is so strange to me, like so strange.
and they're just working on the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
you
like they're trying to sell something. Like maybe they're not individually making money, but like they're incentivized to do that stuff. Like the system is kind of set up to encourage that, and like obviously like the trads can game the algorithm just like everybody else.
yeah, yeah. There's a few more comments that I just want to quickly pull up that I think that you'd appreciate. But then if you don't mind, I'll go to the next question. Um,
Okay.
and so uh, Anton is Catholic. But again, I said this about Daniel. I'll say it about Anton too. If more people were like him, the world would be a better place. Um, And he adds that the reality of LGBTQ folks is a challenge to reconsider the argument that sex and sexuality is designed or teleological, and I don't think that we can write off diverse experiences as being abominations. And Pope Francis says that, right? Pope Francis seems to be
Yeah,
like, I, he wants to change the wording at least to make it less, you know, change the wording, right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's
even like
something.
in my most traditional like moments, like I would read like the part of the catechism calling gay people intrinsically disordered. I'm like, man, this is just bad wording. Like this isn't helpful to anybody. Like, yeah, maybe like some theologians think it's like super technical and useful, but like this is not a scholarly work. And I was like all for like even kind of agreeing with the basic premises to like change the wording and like how it's presented. And I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. But like it is like asking like if you follow Catholic teaching, even the like softer version, like the more Pope Francis version, like I could not marry another man in a Catholic ceremony. And it seems like from what I've read and like what I've seen, like it's a step in the right direction, but it's almost a bit patronizing and like, oh, we'll give you this blessing, but it's only because like, you're trying hard, but you can't really do the full thing yet. Like, and it's still sinful, but like you may not know any better. And like at least that's what you have to do to like rationalize it with historical Catholicism. And
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I think that's good in that like maybe there'll be less overt cruelty to LGBT people. Um, but at least for me, like it almost feels a little worse.
Hmm. Because they're trying to hide the cruelty rather than outright say,
Yeah,
"Hey, that was cruel and we denounce that and we're not going to do that anymore." Instead, they're just kind of
yeah,
pretending like it didn't happen, maybe just trying to smooth over the language a little bit.
yeah. It's still like fundamentally like gay relationships, which I think are normal and healthy and have been around since as long as humans have been
Mm-hmm.
around and even longer, like considering like how common it is and just almost every species we've
Right.
looked at, like yeah, like that still like doesn't work with Catholic philosophy and theology. And I, I I'm glad that it's going in a better direction, but you still have this core that I think is pretty better. And like I mentioned with like conversion therapy, like you'll cycle through this unless like that core is not there.
Yeah. Um, and just real quick before I go back to that one, Colin agrees with you. Personally, I think that improving the wording while keeping the requirement the same is kind of worse. Like at least intrinsically disordered is honest, and that is what
Yeah,
you just said. Um, but but yeah. Um, uh, ooh, I'm having a little bit of trouble now. All of a sudden, pulling up comments. Um, but here it is. Um, so the Mahayanist mind brought up a really interesting point, and I haven't taken a biology class since I was 14. But sex evolved because social animals evolved, and homosexuality is a function of how sex functions in a social role. It's the same reason we value romantic love, which is another function of social animals. That's interesting, and there's a little bit of a conversation going on about like why sex evolved, like why don't we all just reproduce asexually, and it's all just kind of blowing my mind. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that real
yeah,
quick. Um,
yeah.
and and CJ
It's
writes some
definitely
stuff.
an interesting topic. I do not have a good answer for it. I'm sure there's one out there that isn't. We were just all abused as kids,
Right.
because that's clearly wrong. But I do think it's pretty evident that like it's just a normal part of life on Earth.
I've got two more questions for you, like official questions for you, if that's all right. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm having a
so
good time.
okay, cool, good. Just making sure. So you mentioned this already briefly. Um, your wake up call to like kind of stop being Catholic had something to do with COVID and the vaccines and all that. But I don't think I'd be doing this interview right if I wasn't trying to drill down like maybe a little bit deeper there. Can you tell me more
Yeah.
about your journey out? Um, why did the vaccine cause you to realize that maybe everything wasn't chalked up to how you thought it might have been at first, and all that?
Yeah. So for like most of COVID, like I was still practicing remotely. I was definitely not going to a crowded place every Sunday. I was all for the restrictions and all that stuff. But I still considered myself, Orthodox, conservative at least, mildly traditional, as mildly as you can be. Um,
Trad adjacent.
and yeah, and I was that like throughout all of 2020, like really not a lot of doubt, but there was some separation, which um, if I made the right choice was a good thing because it helped me, kind of break out of some habits. And if you believe Catholicism, right, is a bad thing because it, let evil get to me and stuff like that because I didn't have the sacraments to protect me and the like social conditioning to like help keep me in line. What really like broke me or like broke the spell like this was like the first place where like I kind of rebelled against the like the conservative position is when we got to the vaccines, particularly the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, which I have a Pfizer shot, so I'm Team Pfizer. Um, from back when that was a big thing.
Yep, I have a
Um,
Pfizer as well.
yeah, the Cadillac of COVID shots, in my
That's right.
opinion. The J&J one was the like 20-year-old Chevy Impala
That's
was
right.
how I described it.
Yep.
Um, anyway, there was like a big controversy about fetal tissue from abortions used both in the manufacturing of vaccines, which I think the J&J one may have had that, but particularly in like the Moderna and Pfizer it was used for research purposes, and there was there was like a big controversy in mainstream Catholic like media, not just like traditionalists. And and the argument was that you're contributing to evil. You can take the vaccines, but like if you read like the Vatican documents about this, which this like last part conveniently gets left out by like the American bishops and like the like popular presentation of the policy was you can do the vaccines, but you have to make it clear that it's under protest. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. Like these are so insanely far removed. Like I read about it, and like at best, like some basic research was done by one guy, and they like used a paper from that to like help develop the vaccines. And if like that is a trigger for like telling everybody like I got the vaccine, but still it's still bad. It was under protest. Like that is just like so like disproportionate and really like a giant waste of everybody's time was like the big thing for me. It's like this is just a giant waste of everybody's time. No good is coming from me doing this. I'm like I'm not doing it. Like this is just this. And then there was like a couple of like conservative people who like took the same view and like kind of backed me up and like that gave me a little bit of cover. But I'm like I'm not doing this. But like it really like you question one thing and it's like because of how like Catholicism works, like you question one thing seriously, like it all like starts to unravel if you follow those threads. So yeah, like that, which compared to like some of the other like conspiracy theories and like COVID denialism that was going around, which I definitely did not agree with, and like would like on like Reddit and stuff, and like amongst my like conservative friends would push back against pretty strongly while still like trying to be faithful. Like that wasn't enough. It was this like I don't know this time wasting thing that actually convinced me, but like I don't know, it just felt so obvious to me that this was like not the right decision. Um, that it actually like pushed me over the edge.
And tell me if you get this same feeling. So, I remember during 2020, there were a lot of conservative Catholics who were kind of on team, like, I will begrudgingly get the vaccine. Um, but it almost seems like today, like 3 years later or whatever, the debate has fallen very clearly on the side of anti-vax, not anti-vax entirely, but at least anti-COVID vax, and
Yeah,
like on like Pints with Aquinas, like Matt Fradd is always bragging about how he like never got vaccinated, and like he's always like asking his guests, "Did you get vaccinated?" And sometimes they're like, "Yeah, I did. I really hate to admit it, but hey, I thought it was the right thing to do," and like it almost seems like if you're like in the Catholic influencer space, you have to be on anti-COVID vax team now. You know what I mean? Have you noticed that?
yeah,
It's
I know
weird.
because I don't follow that
Oh,
anymore. I
good.
occasionally my one guilty pleasure is occasionally I listen to Bishop Barron's podcast for
Okay.
sentimental reasons, but like other than that, like I'm pretty out of it, both for my own like sanity and honestly, it got kind of boring. Like a lot of it's the same stuff repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
Like to be a little bit flippant, like it's the same shit but with a different theologian.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. But that's
um,
the feeling I get is that, the like the church has gotten more and more anti-COVID vax over time, and I don't know why.
I think it's just like it's just the like magnification of American Catholicism and uh, sorry, something popped up on my screen. I gotta close it real quickly.
Sorry.
Um, like the magnification of like American and European Catholicism too, which is pretty scary. I much prefer our pathologies to be confined to America, and not the rest of the world.
This is a really good point. The Daily Wire people did it. Don't Trad Catholics to love that show. Yes, and I actually am not super plugged in on the like political side of the spectrum. Like I look, all my attention goes to the Catholic stuff. Like you can't make me watch the Daily Wire and Pints with Aquinas. Like, oh my gosh, like that's my plate is full with just Pints with Aquinas.
That
Okay,
yeah,
but
that would be a war crime.
yeah, I don't think my mind would be able to take it. But I guess that sounds right to me. Although I thought I
Yeah,
remembered them being like fairly pro-vaccine in 2020 because they were like, yeah, Trump's Operation what was it called? It was like
warp speed,
yeah, Operation
warp
Warp
speed.
Speed. They were all like pro-vaccine, and then all of a sudden Trump lost re-election, and then they weren't anymore. And I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know.
yeah. No, I think like it's pretty obvious that the vaccines were a miracle of modern medicine, particularly the mRNA vaccines, with how quickly they were developed and how like that technology, how useful and effective that can be on a lot of diseases. Like this this is probably because I'm not a biologist, but I'm a science nerd. Like one of the most we'll see how it pans out, but like probably could be one of the most like impactful like medical technology since we invented vaccines.
Yeah. I work in pharma. So I actually, during 2020, I was working for the company that was manufacturing um, the vaccines. So not a lot of people know this, but the way that pharma works, for the most part, is like um, the companies that own the drugs are not always the same companies that manufacture the drugs. So Pfizer and Moderna own the vaccine, but they don't manufacture the vaccine. They have a company
Mhm.
like Catalent Pharma Solutions, who you've never heard of because they don't own any of their own drugs. They just do the manufacturing. So I worked for them at the time. That I don't work for them anymore. I've actually worked for two separate companies since then. But I worked for them manufacturing the vaccine. Um, I had my nose in the data like a lot. Um,
Yeah,
so whenever people are like, want to try to talk to me about like, serious adverse events, I'm like, have you looked at the data? It's like the
yeah,
safest vaccine since like sliced bread. But
yeah.
anyway,
It's also a risk versus reward thing. Like that also drove me nuts about all of COVID. Is like just getting both like from the left and the right, like really getting into a risk based thinking, a risk versus reward based thinking was very frustrating, and I think really caused lot of problems and misunderstandings.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
But I'm also an engineer, so a little biased there.
engineers. I've got one final question for you, and this perhaps is the most important question. How have you been since you stopped identifying as Catholic? Um, is it hard? And then also, like, I guess, how how do you call yourself now?
Yeah, I'll answer the last one because I think it's a little bit simpler. I call myself agnostic, um, technically, but for all like practical purposes, I'd be an atheist. I would not like be upset if someone said that about me. Like I think that's enough precision for that describes like how I live my life. And yeah, so that's kind of how I view things now. I think it's like extremely unlikely that I would become religious again, like even in a liberal way. Um, I just think it doesn't work. And I've also experienced it and am recovering from it a little bit. And then how I've been, um, great. Like honestly, like leaving was made such an improvement in my mental health. My life is far, far better
Good.
since I left. Luckily, like I don't come from like a trad family, so I didn't like lose like family connections because of this. Like I lost some friends, um, but I also had I moved the same year like I left. I moved to LA. I got my dream job. I work on human spaceflight now, which really helped fill the purpose void
Yep.
by being able to contribute to that. And yeah, I have no like it was definitely the right thing to do, both like intellectually in terms of my well-being. It's been an almost unambiguous good thing. There's definitely like parts of it that I miss, like the art and the ritual. Like I do think is incredibly beautiful, and I don't want that to go away. Like I'm still a sucker for like a candlelit midnight mass on Christmas Eve. It's pretty great. And yeah, and I don't like. There's obviously still a lot of like Catholics. I think I've tried to be clear about this that I respect and think are good people and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I'm way happier outside of it.
The word that I often use is that I feel more honest. And I did lose family over it,
Mm-hmm.
and that was tough. So in that sense, I'm not better. But in terms of like my mental health, for the first time, I felt like I was actually being honest with myself. Does any of that like ring true to you? Like, does it?
Yeah, yeah, you can like actually say I don't know and I'm not sure. Like you don't have like this moral obligation to like toe the party line and
Yes.
like just like fake it till you make it. Like there's
Yes.
like issues and stuff like from like for example like in gay culture like it's obviously a lot of promiscuity and I'm not convinced it's like always a good thing. I'm also not convinced that it's always a bad thing like the Catholic Church teaches. I think there's maybe some that's like something that like I question you know and I can honestly say like I don't know if like hookup culture is a totally bad thing,
But you
and
have the
that's
space to
really
question
freeing.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and not having eternal stakes on getting it right, and being able to like try new things that honestly like are not gonna like be super harmful. Like, and you can yeah you get there's a freedom in that but also like a lot of responsibility to you have to make the decision. You don't got some guy in a fancy robe telling you what's true anymore. But it's very rewarding to like be comfortable in saying yeah I don't know like there's maybe something there. um, and you can experiment, like you can look into it and come to a conclusion, but you don't have it like predetermined for you.
Yeah, yeah, which is honest, but also probably scary, but also
Hmm.
probably rewarding. Um,
Yeah,
with relation to the itch for that midnight candle mass, Colin says candlelit midnight magical rituals can fill that void. But I feel that too, and sometimes I feel like a little bit crazy for saying that I miss some of that stuff, but I do. You know, it's weird. Like
yeah,
there's something deeply human about it. Like I don't know how to explain
yeah,
it. There's something deeply human about like all gathering together in the middle of the night, one day a year, and lighting a whole bunch of candles and singing some
yeah,
Latin hymns. You know, like it's weird, but it's I don't know. There's something about it, and I do miss it.
yeah, yeah. There's I'll give one quick story, that's sort of like Colin's comment, which the traditionalists would consider this, deeply, deeply sinful. But I work at SpaceX now, and a few months ago, Starship launched for the first time, and we were all out, like the whole company was out celebrating. It was like a huge day. Like we were at this like bar. It was just packed with SpaceX people, and a Nicki Minaj song, "Starships Come On," and the chorus is "Starships were meant to fly." And every time that came on, like the whole bar just belted that out as loud as it could be. And I thought it was just like the cool, like I had the same like feeling like in my chest that you can get in like some of these religious rituals. Cause like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's something special and unique. And you got that little bit of like, drama to it from the music. And you're like with a bunch of people who are celebrating the same good thing with you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that is kind of what is giving us that feeling anyway. Is like just the communion with other humans, kind of celebrating something together.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you, Colin.
absolutely.
um, John Luke, this has been awesome. Those were all of my questions for you, but I always like to kind of hand it over to you, to my guests at the end, and just see if there's any kind of note that you want to end on. Like, I guess if you could leave a message to somebody who was, struggling with being gay and being Catholic or something, like, uh, what would you want to say to them? And if that's not the note you want to end on, then feel free to go in a different direction.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Like I don't want you to like blindly reject it. Like you need to evaluate things critically and make your own decisions. My like one like piece of advice that was super helpful for me to um, you know look at things more objectively is like you need to like discount the threat of hell. Like you can't, like it's so distorting as a concept for thinking critically that you just really can't do it. Like you need to like give yourself the freedom to like, at least for the moment while you evaluate, pretend it doesn't exist. Like I think that's like the biggest thing that like I learned was um, like in hindsight, like just like how distorting that that idea can be to like making informed decisions about religion. Like I think you can kind of see this in Pascal with the wager. Like the only like if you don't have hell, like the wager doesn't make Pascal's wager doesn't make any sense. Like it just falls apart. Which I also think like shows that it's kind of like a dumb argument because like you're making like a risk based call, but if you like tweak, you can't like you can tweak this one part and you don't get a different conclusion, and if you throw out this one, it's like 100% the opposite. I mean, to me, that tells me it's not really adding anything of value to the conversation. And just thinking like that and giving yourself the freedom to do that um, is important. And I think you'll probably come out like the way I did. I think that's probably best, but we're we're all responsible adults for our decisions and actions, and um, trying to do our best.
I think that's an awesome note to end on. I guess here's where I this is almost a tradition at this point. Colin wants you to join my Discord. I don't know if you're on Discord. I can.
I am on Discord.
Okay, I'll send you a link when we're done here. Feel free to join or not to join. You know, no pressure either way. And tell you what, if I remember, I'll just put the link in the description of this video too. So if anybody else who's in the live chat wants to join, they can. We have a lot of discussions in that Discord, like the one that we just did. And we have a good mix of Catholics and non-Catholics too. So we have really good discussions in there. John Luke, thank you so much. This was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Your story is an important one, and I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to share it. So with that, thank you everybody, and until next time.